Hey crew, it's Pitt, and I'm back with another Bible study. Today we're going to be diving back into Numbers, and today we are going to be diving into some somewhat controversial topics. Some people may get distressed by some of the things that we talk about today. I do an unconventional Bible study where I am just reading the Word and we're seeing what it says without the lens of any predetermination of the effects of it. I suggest that if you are unfamiliar with what I'm doing here, you start in Genesis because it is easier to keep up if you do so. But you can join us now as we get into Numbers 20 because we left off in Numbers 19. And today we're going to be getting into some wild stuff. Today is going to actually be entertaining. We will be looking at a lot of things. But first we need to talk about a little bit of history again, right? This is again jumping around chronologically. We have gone from before the law to after the law to back before the law to after the law to back before the law. In the first month, the whole congregation of Israel entered the wilderness of Sin and stayed in Kadesh. There Miriam died and was buried. Now, Miriam was the prophetess who was partially responsible for the leadership of Israel as they left the desert. Now, let's make sure that y'all can actually see this whole thing. Yes, you can. Okay, so to the south, all the way at the bottom of this map, and I pulled this map up because we will be referencing it several times today. All the way at the bottom of this map is Kadesh. This is the area that they're talking about. This is the Dead Sea, the Jordan River. This is Edom. The Amalekites are over this way. This is the Negev. The Negev desert comes out in this direction and down in this direction. This is part of Israel currently, and it is a highly disputed area. We will be talking about the Negev here shortly. This is the area. This is Moab, where the Moabites live. This is the Amorites, the southern Amorites, who are separate from the northern Amorites, which are up here. This is Sihon. This is Og. The first part that we will be talking about is dealing with the Sihon Amorites. There will be some references to Og. We will get to that. But for right now, we are at Kadesh. This is just above. Let's pop over to Google Earth now. That is the area just above Midian. If we take and draw the line out here and out this way, this is the Negev desert here right in the middle. Midian is down here, and we're talking about Hadeth right here. They came out of the wilderness of Sin. Now, I have talked about how I don't believe that this is the wilderness of Sin. I believe that this is, and they came out and met up at pretty much the same place that they would have come up out this side. I believe that they came through the land of Midian. I don't believe they wandered up the peninsula of Sinai. I believe they crossed the Gulf of Aqaba. I've talked about all of these things before. I'm well aware that I could be wrong. I am fully willing to accept that, right? This is just my belief. This is how I believe that it logically played out. And I'm sharing that with you. So now let's talk about Miriam. Miriam is one of the three leaders, right? She is, we have learned, Aaron's sister. Now, she wasn't mentioned in Exodus as being Aaron's sister. She wasn't mentioned as, she's very briefly, pretty much only talked about as dying. And when she dies, that now there was no water for the congregation. She was the one that could manipulate the waters. She was the one that was able to do the things with the waters through the manipulation device that they have. Right? We've already talked about how I believe that there is a technology that we are not currently in possession of. They were not in control. They didn't create it. I think that they either stole it from Midian, or they stole it from Egypt, or they were given it by one of the two. But somehow they got a hold of this technology that allowed them to manipulate electromagnetics. It explains a lot of things that we are seeing here, and it is described in Exodus. But when she died, there was no water now. And so the tribes of Israel, gathered against Moses and Aaron. When water disappeared, they were like, nope, your God's no longer doing the things that he said he was going to do. Now, you can make arguments about the unfaithfulness of the Israelites, right? We've talked about that before, but I don't personally believe that they could have seen the things that they've seen and been as rebellious as they were, right? It's hard to rebel while the angel is still in your presence, while you're still being led by a pillar of fire, right? So the people quarreled with Moses and said, if only we had perished with our brothers before the Lord. And again, this is the Israelites remembering. We were provided for in Egypt. We had food. We had water. We were not necessarily as oppressed as a lot of people would like to think that it means. Now, slavery is never okay. But slavers see that as their property. They don't just arbitrarily beat their property. They don't arbitrarily kill their property. Now, they may take discipline too far, and I don't dispute that in the slightest. But that doesn't mean that the whole mindset of slavery was beat your slaves. It wasn't. It was dominate them, absolutely. It was not allow them to have free will and reign, absolutely. But it was not beat them into submission every day. If so, then the uprising would have been a lot sooner. Instead, what happens is these people aren't allowed to leave, true. But for the most part, a lot of them are given semi-autonomy, right? So within the assembly of the slaves, you are able to do things that humans do. You are able to select your own mate in this particular time, and in our understanding of it, right? They were allowed to pick their own mates. They were allowed to have their own households. They had crops and animals, but they were slaves. They were despised, but they had the best land in the whole area. Right? We've talked about that in Exodus. And so they're coming out of slavery where they led a life of work, but not necessarily hardship. Well, now they're in hardship. There is no food, there is no water. They're not allowed to eat these animals that they are leading through the desert. And so they're a little bit upset. And then the water is gone. The person who made the water manifest dies, and they're upset because they're not sure they're going to be able to get water anymore. And if only we had perished with our brothers before the Lord. Now, that's an interesting turn of phrase, too. What brothers? Who died? Like, when we were seeing the plagues, the Israelites were spared for the most part, right? They didn't lose their brothers. We haven't seen them up to this point, even in a battle. This is 1 month. This is the first month out of slavery into the wilderness. So they haven't had time to have the battles that are about to happen. Like, we're about to get into the battles. But right now, they're mad that they don't have the provision that they had, that God has not done what he said he was going to do. Why have you brought the Lord's assembly into this wilderness for us and our livestock to die here? Now, they have livestock 1 month after leaving Egypt, right? Not just a couple of goats and cows. There are 3 million people, right? I've talked about my justification for those numbers. I will stand by them. So I say 3 million. It is not necessarily 3 million. It could have been 1. It was probably not less than that. It could have been 5. It's probably not more than that. We go with 3. It's a nice middle of the road number. And so, and then they're mad because they're out in the wilderness. And why have you led us out of Egypt to bring us to this wretched place? It is not a place of grain, figs, vines, and pomegranates. There is no water to drink. They were promised in Egypt that God would deliver them into a land flowing with milk and honey, that they would not have to conquer it, that it would be readily available to them, that they would just walk in and everyone in front of them would flee in terror. That was their promise, that they would go and take possession of a land that was not theirs. So why did they scout it out? If that was the promise, why did Aaron and Moses allow it to happen and then punish the people who did it? Because that wasn't what God told them. That is what they told the people that God told them. They wrote it down. We have a record of them telling it. But that doesn't mean that's what happened. It's really hard to walk that fine line, because it is a fine line that I walk. I do believe great portions of this book There are great things in this book, but despite the best efforts of man, the best efforts of man are to hide the things that God actually told us, to let us believe things that will keep us under control. This was establishing control for the tribe of Levi and the priesthood of the peoples of Israel. It worked. It rose them up. It gave them a new level of understanding. It made them set apart. It did wonderful things, but that does not mean it was correct. And then Moses and Aaron went from the presence of the assembly to the entrance of the tent of meeting, and they fell face down, and the glory of the Lord appeared to them. And the Lord said to Moses, "Take the staff and assemble the congregation. You and your brother Aaron are to speak to the rock while they watch, and it will pour out its water. You will bring out water from the rock and provide drink for the congregation and their livestock." And so Moses took the staff from the Lord's presence, just as he had been commanded. And then Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly in front of the rock. And Moses said to them, "Listen now, you rebels, must we bring you water out of this rock?" And then Moses raised his hand and struck the rock twice with his staff, so that a great amount of water rushed out, and the congregation and their livestock were able to drink. But the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "Because you did not trust me to show my holiness in the sight of the Israelites, you will not bring this assembly into the land that I have given them." We talk an awful lot about how this God is capricious. He is so spiteful, just mean-spirited. This is a mean-spirited God. In Exodus, the same story plays out, and God says, "Why are you bringing this to me? Go handle this yourself." And so they do. And they go out and they handle it themselves, and then they get told, "Oh, now you done messed up." That's spiteful. That's just capricious because you didn't properly attribute. You're telling me that the priest didn't say God brought up. This was a justification for why Moses didn't make it into the promised land. That's what this is right here. Now, whether or not they actually brought water from a rock, I believe that it's possible. 100%. I can't do it. I've never seen it done. That does not mean it can't be. Just because I don't understand it does not mean it cannot be. I can find it highly doubtful. That doesn't mean that it's not possible. Now, in the context of God, I hold nothing back. I believe that He is capable of doing whatever, but that some things are revealed to us about His nature and who He is. We saw in Genesis who He was. We saw what His commands were to Noah, and then how they changed drastically through Abraham and on. Now, we have this capricious God who is going to take the one person that He chose to show, this is my people, and this guy is going to lead them, but not into the land that I give them. But wait, there's more. These were the waters of Meribah, where the Israelites quarreled with the Lord, and He showed His holiness among them. Like, He doesn't like God here, this God does not like to be questioned. He does not like His provision to be questioned at all. He doesn't like His doctrine to be questioned at all. He does not like His rules and commandments to be questioned at all. And we see further along in the text that He does not mind that. We have seen before that He doesn't mind questions. So it's only here that we are given this strict structure. Now, that is not to say that the law disappears and people just go willy-nilly, right? They're still held to account. But, all right, now we are going to be getting into the parts that get fun. Let's look at this. Okay, so from Kadesh, Moses sent messengers to tell the king of Edom, "This is what your brother Israel says. You know all the hardship that has befallen us, how our fathers went down to Egypt, where we lived many years. The Egyptians mistreated us and our fathers, and when we cried out to the Lord, He heard our voice, sent an angel, and brought us out of Egypt. Now look, we are in Kadesh, a city on the edge of your territory. Please let us pass through your land. We will not cut through any field or vineyard or drink water from any well. We will stay on the king's highway. We will not turn to the right or the left until we have passed through your territory." But Edom answered, "You may not travel through our land or we will come out and confront you with the sword. We will stay on the main road, the Israelites replied, and if we or our herds drink your water, we will pay for it. There will be no problem, only let us pass through on foot. But Edom insisted, you may not pass through. And they came out to confront the Israelites with a large army and a strong hand. So Edom refused to allow Israel to pass through their territory, and Israel turned away from them. So, let's look. Here is Edom, down at the bottom, right? This is Kadesh. Midian is just below us, right here. They are trying to get to this land, the green, and they're being denied. Edom says, nope, you will not come through here. The King's Road runs well east of the Jordan. It runs well east of the Sinai Peninsula, way over here. When they say that they would be going up the King's Highway, like I think Kadesh was a little bit farther down. I have absolutely no justification for that, other than it fits getting on the road a little bit better. But they were like, we want to pass through your lands, right? Well, if they were going this way, which we will see in just a minute, then why were they trying to go up this way? Well, let's get to it. Edom refused to allow Israel to pass through their territory, and Israel turned away from them. And after they had set out from Kadesh, the whole congregation of Israel came to Mount Hor. And at Mount Hor, near the border of the land of Edom, the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, Aaron will be gathered to his people. He will not enter the land that I have given the Israelites, because both of you rebelled against my command at the waters of Meribah. Take Aaron and his son Eleazar, and bring them up Mount Hor. Remove Aaron's priestly garments and put them on his son Eleazar. Aaron will be gathered to his people and will die there. All right, so let's pop out Mount Hor just to see. Bam, right there. Now, there are two, right? Two mountains in Palestine is what it says. There's one at the top and one at the bottom. This is the one at the bottom. We don't get, I just wanted to see if there was an actual naming convention reason. Yeah, no. Okay, so Mount Hor is off of this map. I believe that Mount Hor is, all right, let's look at where we are right now. Now, this is the land of Edom in the Negev. It extends over this way where this Dana Biosphere Reserve is right here. Now, I believe that this is the wilderness of Paran. If we look, there's a city of Paran here. But this area is Paran. As far as I can tell, they go and scout out from Paran up this way. They were trying to go through the land of the Edomites to get to the land of the Canaanites. And they were denied entry. And then Aaron's going to die, right? They know ahead of time he goes away from the congregation. They go up the mountain and they change garments and he dies on top of this mountain. Surely that is just coincidence. And now we get into some more of the conquest. And this, when the Canaanite king of Arid, who lived in the Negev, heard that Israel was coming along the road to Atharim, he attacked Israel and captured some prisoners. So Israel made a vow to the Lord, if you will deliver this people into our hands, we will devote their cities to destruction. Let's see if we can find, yeah, this is Arad right here. So they were trying to get into Canaan here. And they keep getting repelled, right? We've seen them get repelled the first time over here. They're over in this area now, trying to get into the land that they were promised. This is the land that they were promised, that they were just going to walk in and take possession of, and that people would flee from them in terror. Then they set out from Mount Hor along the route to the Red Sea in order to bypass the land of Edom. But the people grew impatient on the journey and spoke against God and against Moses. Why have you led us out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? There is no bread or water. We detest this wretched food. Now, we're looking, like we started off, we were a month out, right? In the first month, And so they're trying to get in. Like, this is throwing the whole timeline off from before. Because this has them trying to take possession of the land before they get the law. They didn't get the law 1 month in. They got the law after 2 months, because it was talking about they had been 2 months in, right? So they go up north. They get repelled by Edom. Says, no, you can't come this way. They're coming out of Midian. Edom's like, nope, not coming this way. So they try to bypass that. They get repelled by the Canaanites. And so they're like, all right, we're going to head back down to the Red Sea. Right? The Red Sea is down here. This is the Midianites, so they can't go back and take possession of the land of Midian. They either go into the land of the peninsula of Sinai, which is possessed by more Edomites, right? The sons of Edom. There was a lot of Canaanites and Edomites and all the sons of Enoch, not Enoch, Esau, came this way, and they live in this area, right? But this area, not so much. That's why I believe that this is where it was, right? We talked about how I believe that this is Sinai, right here by Jebel El Oz, right down here where they had this natural pentagram in the earth. I believe that that's where he received the law, and you have to be on the east side of the mountains to be able to get here, because you're not taking 3 million people through the passes in these mountains. It is just too rough. There is no true passage through it. So they come down this way, and this is when they get the law. It's at this point. But Aaron was there when we got the law. Aaron was there for a long time after we got the law. He definitely did not die after a couple of months, right? His sister died, and there was contention about leadership well after a month. So we have continuity issues. That's because they're justifying things. Like, this is them justifying the conquest of the land that they've taken possession of. They never thought that, well, the people probably thought that they were going to go up and just take possession. Moses and Aaron may have thought that seeing 3 million people would send them in a terror. They may be led by this pillar of fire. And if they're led by a pillar of fire, which moves, right? We saw before they crossed the Red Sea that it went from one side of the congregation to the other side of the congregation and stood between Israel and Egypt while they crossed. So if we have that, then why are these people not fleeing? Why? Because they already see this stuff. This is the land of the Anak. This is the land around Hebron where the Anak are from, where the Nephilim still live. There is still people in possession of the artifacts and the knowledge. And now we're going to get into some more wild stuff, right? So they go down to bypass the land of Edom. They're going to go around. That's what happens here. When they go up through the wilderness of sin, they go down towards the Red Sea and wander around the backside of Edom. This makes it seem like they're going into Sinai, or the peninsula of Sinai. That's not right. It's not right. In my logically consistent attempt to stay normal here, right? And so they spoke against God and Moses. Why have you led us up out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? There is no bread or water, and we detest the wretched food. And so this, again, is prior to the manna. This is before the law. This is before they go to the mountain. This chronologically is out of place. But that's to confuse you, because if they told you that Aaron died here and that he was in the story later, there would be problems. But if they put the part where he dies after the part where he was important, then you don't get as confused about it. And they just don't speak on it, right? You don't hear about these parts how many times have you ever gone to church and had a service on the conquest of the land of Israel? The defeat of the Palestinians, not Palestinians, they don't exist then. The Canaanites and the Philistines. Right? The destruction of the Amorites. You don't get stories about that. Like, you might hit it lightly in a Bible study. You might hit it lightly in a Sunday school type situation. But you're not going to hear that from the pastor at the pulpit. He's not going to be preaching about going and conquering these lands because it is counter to the narrative that he is pitching you. It would be counter to what they are pitching Israel if Aaron died before the law. But here it places him dying before the law. Before they leave the land of Midian and they are heading towards the land they are meant to take possession of, and they don't get it. So they get repelled and they go down and around Moab. That is, when they come down, they get the law, and then they go around Moab and back up. And so they're mad because there's no bread or water, and we just test this wretched food. And the Lord sent venomous snakes among the people, and many of the Israelites were bitten and died. So we have here God using venomous creatures to go and attack his people that he let out for having the audacity to want to be fed and watered. How dare you presume that the God who is personally leading you through a pillar of fire and smoke to actually provide for these 3 million people who are here? How dare you? That is so audacious. I mean, really, what were you even thinking? But then the people came to Moses and said, because they're getting bitten by these snakes, right? We have sinned by speaking against the Lord and against you. Intercede with the Lord so he will take the snakes away from us. And so Moses interceded for the people. And then the Lord said to Moses, make a fiery serpent and mount it on a pole. Thou shalt not take for yourself any graven image of any created thing. So take a fiery serpent, the creature that provided the temptation in the wilderness, the thing that is going to be a contention between you and your offspring for eternity. It will forever bite your heel and you will crush its head. But if you make one out of bronze and put it on a stick and look at it, if you're getting bitten by a snake, you're going to be okay. I bet. This is the roots of the caduceus, right? And I say the roots very loosely because that is the common way of thinking about it. Now, I think that the caduceus is a much, much older symbol, and that it is incorporated in here much like many other things because it was known. It was already something they knew about, and they had to attribute it to God. And so we get this. Now, it may have happened. It absolutely may have happened. Faith can do wonderful things, and if you tell somebody that this thing will make this thing happen and they believe you, it can work. It can. Look at these people that wander around holding the snakes. They don't get bitten. Right? That's because of their faith. You may not like to hear that. They are dumb for doing that because you shouldn't be tempting God in that manner. But if you have faith, miraculous things can happen. I don't believe that you needed a snake on a pole any more than you needed a man on a pole later. I don't believe that any redemption comes from the things of this plane. Any redemption at all comes from God himself. But this was a way to keep them from piling on, right? So if you get bitten by this snake, look at this snake, you'll be fine. We will just leave that there. We're not even going to try to explain any more about that. But it is interesting to note that this is reminiscent of the caduceus, which is the physician's staff, right? The staff with the snakes entwirling it. All right. And then the Israelites set out and camped at Oboth. They journeyed from Oboth and camped at Abarim in the wilderness, opposite Moab, to the east. So they wandered down towards the Red Sea and wound up on the east side of Moab. and then they come up into the wilderness of Paran. From there, they set out and camped in the valley of Zered. From there, they moved on and camped on the other side of the Arnon, into the wilderness that extends into the Amorite territory. Now, the Amorites are here, the Moabians are here. This is where we are talking about them being, on the east side. Now, Moab told them that, or Edom told them they can't go through there. They couldn't take the King's Road. So they are over here. They went around Edom and up the backside on the east. Now, the Arnon is the border between the Moabites and the Amorites. Therefore, it is stated in the book of the wars of the Lord. This is one of those books that we don't have. I wasn't able to find an actual book of the wars of the Lord. It's much like the book of Enoch. It is referenced. It is something that was there then, right? Way back in Numbers, they had the book of the wars of the Lord. They record all of their battles and their travels in this book. It would be very beneficial to God if this book existed. It would be very beneficial to God if the book of Enoch was included in the canon. But we don't have these. These are extra biblical books. Like this one, we don't even have a record of it. The book of Enoch, which is referenced a lot, we don't have either. Like we have something that we assume is, and then we have a second book that probably isn't. But it's not included in the canon, so we can't say that it is the book that we are referencing, right? But we do have a section of this book that is recorded for us. Waheb and the Sufa, and the wadis of the Arnon, even the slopes of the wadis, extend to the side of Arb and lie along the border of Moab. So again, we are talking here. Now, probably right here in this dividing line along this area. The wadis are rivers. Not necessarily rivers that stay flowing, but seasonal rivers. And it is a natural dividing line just as much as a mountain is. Anytime you have a river or a mountain, it's easy to divide the people by those. And this is just giving us a description of where they are. And from there they went on to Beer, the well where the Lord said to Moses, "Gather the people so that I may give them water." And then Israel sang this song, "Spring up, O well, all of you sing to it." The princes dug the well, the nobles of the people hollowed it out with their scepters and with their staffs. This is an interesting piece of history that we have no reference of. Right? Other than this, we don't really have a story of princes digging a well and nobles hollowing it out with scepters and staffs. I would like to have that story, but we don't. And from the wilderness, the Israelites went on to Matana, and from Matana to Nahaliel, and from Nahaliel to Bamoth, and from Bamoth to the valley in Moab, where the top of Pisgah overlooks the wasteland. Now, a lot of these cities, places, are not the same. They have moved or they do not exist any longer. But it is safe to assume that we are describing going around the outskirts of Moab. Two cities that align along the outskirts until you get all the way up to where it is on the border of the Amorites, right? So we are right here. The Wadi of Anar is right here. Then Israel sent messengers to Sihon, the king of the Amorites, this is the southern Amorites, saying, "Let us pass through your land. We will not cut through any field or vineyard, or drink water from any well. We will stay on the king's highway until we have passed through your territory." But Sihon would not let Israel pass through his territory. Instead, he gathered his whole army and went out to confront Israel in the wilderness. When he came to Jahaz, he fought against Israel, And Israel put him to the sword and took possession of his land from the Arnon to the Jabbok, but only up to the border of the Ammonites because it was fortified. So, he comes out here with his 600,000 fighting man force, and he has been repelled over here, so he's lost some, right? And he's been denied over here, and he's wandered through the desert, so it may or may not be 600,000 fighting men. But it is more than Sihon has. And so, this land becomes the wilderness that they wander in for 40 years. Up to the point where they get to these fortified cities, right here where it says Jazer or Rabbah. Like this right here was the fortified cities. They weren't able to take the lands of Ammon because of the fortified cities. We have more Amorites. The land of Og is just to the north, and we will be dealing with that here shortly. But they have come into the land of Sihon, the land of the Amorites who are led by Sihon, and that is who they have just put to the sword and killed all of them. Israel captured all the cities of the Amorites and occupied them, including Heshbon and all its villages. Heshbon was the city of Sihon, king of the Amorites, who had fought against the former king of Moab and taken all his land as far as the Arnon. And this is why the poets say, "Come to Heshbon, let it be rebuilt. Let the city of Sihon be restored. For a fire went out from Heshbon, a blaze from the city of Sihon. It consumed Ar of Moab, the rulers of Arnon's heights. Woe to you, O Moab! You are destroyed, O people of Shemosh. He gave up his sons as refugees and his daughters into captivity. To Sihon, king of the Amorites. But we have overthrown them. Heshbon is destroyed as far as Dibon. We demolished them as far as Nophah, which reaches to Medaba." Medaba, Heshbon, this is the land that they have taken. And from here, they established the base that gives them conquest of the entire land. So Israel lived in the land of the Amorites. After Moses had sent spies to Jazer, Israel captured its villages and drove out the Amorites who were there. Right here, Jazer. Right? They took up this area, and now they are expanding into this area. Then they turned and went up the road to Bashan, and Og, king of Bashan, and his whole army came to meet them at the battle of Edrei. But the Lord said to Moses, "Do not fear him, for I have delivered him into your hand, along with all his people and his land. Do to him as you did to Sihon, king of the Amorites, who lived in Heshbon." So they struck down Og, along with his sons, and his whole army, until no remnant was left, and they took possession of his land. So that is this land. So now we have the land of Sihon and the land of Og under control of the Israelis, the Israelites. They have come through the wilderness, they have fought, they have been repelled once, and now they are claiming victory. They are coming into their lands. These are the lands promised to their fathers, right? They were promised everything pretty much from the King's Road to the west. And so they were promised both sides of the Jordan. So when it says that Moses did not step foot into the land they were promised, that's a lie. I know somebody did not like to hear that right now, but it says that Moses takes possession of these lands that are promised in Genesis and Exodus to the people. And Moses goes into them. He is there when they start fortifying their own cities, which we will be getting into. We're going to go ahead and start wrapping this one up for today, but we're just beginning to get into the conquest of Israel. Israel will take possession of this entire land. This is the promised land. All of this that you see right here with the possible exception of the very north and the very south, is the promised land to the Israelites. They do take possession of this land, and Moses was there for the good chunk of the beginning. Now, it took them 40 years to build up enough strength while possessing this land to begin the next part of their conquest. And that happens here shortly. We will be going into it as we go along. And I'm just trying to give a good physical reference of the places that we're talking about and the promises that were given, right? They were promised that they would not be fighting battles as they come into this land, that the peoples would flee from them, that they would merely take possession of these lands. Whether or not Moses made this or God made it, the promise was made, and yet here we are. They're fighting battles. They are being repelled, and then they're wandering around and getting the law on the way and then coming around. And now they're about to take possession of their land, but they're doing it through conquest. They're doing it through putting people to the sword heavily. Og is completely destroyed. Og exists no more. There is no more Og. Him and his sons and his family are gone. They are no longer on the plain. They have no more control of anything. It's important to remember that as we get farther along. Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a very difficult topic. I understand that I hold very unconventional beliefs and that some people will be very upset by the things that I say, but I'm just reading it. I'm just holding to account the things that were supposed to happen that didn't, the things that do happen that weren't supposed to, and the out and out lies that are put into here. We're told that Moses doesn't go into the land, and then we're told he does. It can't be both of them. This is part of the land. They do take possession of it. They live here for 40 years before they take possession of the rest of the land. The generation dies off. But this is the land. This is the land they were promised. They are in it. They are not denied it. They are not nobody who lived and saw will enter. That's not true. This is it happening right now. It looks like they're in the first year at least, right? We started off, it was the first month. Now, again, it could be chronologically bam, 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 bam. This seems to be a coherent chunk of the narrative. It may have been moved from way up here to down here. But that doesn't mean that it's not. It doesn't mean that the chronology could jump, right? That's where I was going. Like, it could be that Miriam died and then it was 40 years later. It could be that Miriam died and then Aaron died and like there was 5 years in between that. We don't know because it is not chronologically consistent at all. Like it jumps around a lot in here. We go from 2 months back to 1 month. We go from years ahead to years behind. It is not cohesive. It is intentionally not cohesive. It is intentionally confusing. Because if it was coherent, you can't say these things. You cannot say that God says no person other than Joshua and Caleb will set foot into the land, and then he gives them the land. Now, they conquered it. They took it. It wasn't just given. They didn't go in and just take possession of things, right? They went and conquered. They went and put to the sword and conquered. I'm not even going to say that that was wrong. That is the history of the world. Every single place on the whole globe has been conquered by somebody at some point. All of it belonged to somebody else than who currently resides there. All of it, at some point, has been in contention. So, conquest is human nature. God built us that way. That doesn't mean that it's the correct way. We live in an area of a time of relative peace here. Despite what you see going on in the whole world, this time is relatively peaceful. You can sleep with some security in your bed at night. That is relatively peaceful. The history of man is raids, murder, and looting. This book was given to us to help us rise above that, but it took a little while to get there. This part of the book is particularly disturbing to pacifists and people who take the New Testament to mean that you are never to defend yourself. That was not the message in the New Testament. When Jesus specifically reprimanded the violence, it was because he was fulfilling the thing that he was supposed to fulfill. He told them to get swords. He told them to defend themselves. He told them to leave. I'm getting bogged down. Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion. If you have questions, let me know. Keep it respectful. I will answer what I need to. I'm not here to be converted, and I'm not here to convert anybody. I'm here to talk about the things that I find in this book, the things that lead me in the direction in which I am led. I firmly believe that God is telling me to get this information out there because there are other people who need to see a logical breakdown of this. They need to see where the inconsistencies lie, and I'm really good at that. I'm terrible at details. I will forget Amalekites and Edomites and Midianites and Moabites. All of that gets jumbled. I have to go and refresh myself every single time. But I can pick out your hypocrisy. I can pick out your lies that quick. I can see it. This right here is one of the biggest lies in the Bible. The fact that Moses went into the land. They took possession of the land. That is important to know. Because we got a narrative about wandering in the desert for 40 years. The land of the Amorites, see? The land of the Amorites is their desert. To them, let's go ahead and pop that back over. To them, this part in the green is the part that they really want. These parts over here are the land of Israel. They are already assigned to tribes before they come into possession of the land. We will see that shortly. But that's not the main part that they're looking for. They're looking for the area around Hebron. This area right here, more so than Jerusalem, is what they're trying to take possession of. This is the land of milk and honey. This is the land where the Anak settled. This was the first cities, right? Hebron, Babylon. I forgot the name of the one over here, where the Gaza Plateau is now. All of these things were they were there prior to the Israelites. These were major cities before the flood. And now there are remnants of the peoples, but it is a whole different land, and the Anak are not in control of it. They are remnants in the land now. We will be getting more into that as we go along too. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pitt State. Peace.